Hello and welcome to this, the first of two reviews of 2011 here on Fast Track.
Over the course of the past year, Rajan and I and the rest of the Fast Track team have brought you stories from over 60 countries, and today we'll be revisiting some of them.
Later on, we'll be re-experiencing some of 2011's ultimate adrenaline rushes, finding out what the burqa ban meant for French tourism and remembering the man who never returned from holiday and is still missing over 2 years later. But first, we'll head back to September, a month that marked the 10th anniversary of terrorist attacks on New York and Washington, D.C. Attacks that changed the way we all travel, lengthening security lines at airports and restricting what we can and can't take on board a plane.
But as I discovered when I went to New York in the run-up to the 10th anniversary of 9/11, some Americans now feel those security checks have gone too far.
You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this.
I proceeded down the ramp to the airplane and was already by that time in tears. It was just, it was compounded with stress and all that was going on. But ultimately, it just felt like I was sexually assaulted.
Nancy Campbell had been rushing to board an early morning flight to Washington from New York's LaGuardia Airport when she was selected for a check at the gate by a female official from the U.S. Transportation Security Administration, or TSA.
What I wasn't prepared for was her full examination of my breast first, and when she got through that, that's when I asked her to stop, that I had had enough.
You can't touch this.
But Nancy was told that either she allowed the search to go on or she wouldn't be able to fly. As she was on an important business trip, Nancy felt she had little choice but to agree.
In the end, she went through and basically touched my both like the insides of my legs, but basically touching my crotch and my buttocks. All the time not offering me an alternative. I really kind of felt like at the end of the process that she kind of knew where she had me.
How does it feel to treat me like you do?
Nancy filed a complaint about her treatment with the TSA. She's far from being a lone voice in the storm which has been created by their new security measures, which include more thorough friskings since they were introduced at American airports last autumn.
How do I feel?
But it's a human interaction which continues to leave some people, like former Miss USA, who was patted down after refusing a full body scan in Dallas, furious, distressed, or both.
I'm crying because I'm just really, really upset that as an American, I have to go through this. And I do feel violated. I didn't think that I would when I had to opt out of the machine, but I completely feel violated.
You can't touch this.
And the enhanced pat-down stories just keep on coming, making it a red-hot issue with American travelers.
When you see a little girl getting patted down on video, they don't like that. People do not like that. You know, when they see a 95-year-old woman who had her diaper inspected, they're not going to like that, and understandably so. Again, if you look at it from the perspective of the TSA, they have to inspect everybody. They have to pat down everybody. So what are you going to do?
We asked the U.S. Transport Security Administration to take part in this program. They declined to be interviewed, but they did send us this statement.
Pat-downs are an important tool to help the TSA detect hidden and dangerous items, such as improvised explosive devices. Only a small percentage of passengers require pat-downs during the security screening process. Pat-downs are conducted by same-gender officers, and all passengers have the right to request private screening at any time.
The perils of the enhanced pat-down, as investigated here on Fast Track back in August. Now in April, France introduced a law banning women from wearing the full-face Islamic veil, as seen in garments such as the niqab and burqa, anywhere in public. Just before the ban was introduced, Rajan went to Paris to see what the implications of this new law might be for the country's tourism industry.
Oui, j'en connais deux.
Two of my friends wear it as part of a spiritual journey, but they feel stigmatized and betrayed by France. There are young women from here, who studied here, who grew up here, with these ideas of freedom, equality and brotherhood taught by their parents and grandparents. Today they don't feel those values in their daily life. They are frustrated.
And these views are echoed by many women in the Middle East.
They'll be very, very hurt. The thoughts that might come into the head that they will be like, they're not thinking about us. They don't think about if we're going to come there. They're going to lose their business. But you're talking about maybe like 5% of the population that puts that. Some people might take a stand and say, I'm not going to go. And if you're thinking about, let's say, Saudi as a country not going to Paris or not going to Europe or whatever the country is that bans the veil, it's a lot of money.
So what happens if you are a tourist in a veil walking through the streets of Paris? The law states that after the current 6-month trial period, a police patrol could apprehend a woman in full veil and fine her €150 on the spot. We asked the French Tourist Board and the French Embassy here in London on several occasions for clarification on the new law and to comment about the potential hazards for visitors, but they declined. France is the second most popular destination in the world for tourists from the Middle East. Its high spenders like these, the Paris luxury goods industry, should be worrying about losing.
When it comes to fashion, we love our fashion. We spend so much money on looking good. I mean, forget seeing us outside. You should see the the girl gathering inside the house. Girls show off. We spend a lot of money on looking good and showing each other off. Like, well, I got this. This is this season. You got last season's. So we spend a lot of money on all these stuff.
Upmarket hotels like this one rely heavily on business from the Gulf and the Middle East. Some 11% of guests are from these parts of the world. But confusion seems to reign here about the new policies.
New ban, actually, I should ask you, what are you referring to? I'm not too sure. But no, France, England have a traditionally Middle Eastern client at certain time of the year. For the last several years, we have had absolutely seen no changes at all on that. Many of our clients from the Middle East wear the veil when they come to our hotel. As far as tourism is concerned, we have every day people from the Middle East and ladies wearing veil.
Rajan in Paris back in March this year, and interestingly, so far only one woman has been convicted under that new law. Now, many of us are lucky enough to take for granted the idea that we can travel to pretty much anywhere across the globe, so long as we can afford it, of course.
But there is one unique category of traveller who won't find a warm welcome in several parts of the world: people living with HIV. In June, I asked why 30 years after the virus was first identified, there is still a list of countries you are probably better off not trying to visit if you have it. Gary Brough loves travelling. He's visited the USA several times, as well as countries like China and Abu Dhabi. But in 1991, he was diagnosed HIV positive and by law banned from these and many other destinations.
I've heard people say that, you know, I wouldn't want to go to a country and visit a country that didn't want to have me there. But frankly, I want to see the world, and I'm interested in different countries and different cultures, and so I don't see why there should be this issue around HIV disclosure in any level, let alone in terms of something as arbitrary as an entry restriction for a country. I'm not some kind of a biological terrorist that's going to go around spreading infection everywhere I go.
Gary's partner has actually been refused entry as a tourist abroad after he's declared his HIV status.
It does seem to sometimes be a little bit arbitrary as to how the rules and regulations are enforced.
It is a deadly disease and there is no known cure.
It's been almost exactly 30 years since the emergence of the disease into mainstream consciousness. Many countries immediately brought in draconian rules forbidding residence, work permits and short-stay visas to people with HIV. But today, with an estimated 30 to 40 million people living with it, medical experts say there's no reason for bans.
There's no justification at all. HIV has been around for a while now. We know how it's transmitted. We know that you can't catch HIV just from socialising with people or shaking hands or just normal everyday interaction.
I'm in very good health. My immune system is very healthy and fit and strong. I can do anything that anybody would do, really, in terms of my physical abilities. After going on to medication, I became a fitness instructor and a Pilates instructor. So I ended up being fitter post-medication than I ever was before I even had the virus.
According to the latest UN research, 5 countries refuse entry point blank for even short-term stays. Egypt, Iraq, Singapore, the Turks and Caicos Islands and Qatar, which is a problem if you're a football fan looking forward to the 2022 World Cup. Meanwhile, 22 countries deport individuals, apparently, once they discover their HIV-positive status. And 49 nations, including Australia and New Zealand, Russia and Israel, impose some form of restriction on the entry, stay and residence of people living with HIV based on their HIV status.
I think the difficulty is often that once a country's introduced a ban, it's much harder to repeal it. Because it looks like a reasonable thing to do. It's often quite popular with people who don't understand HIV, and there's still a lot of HIV stigma around.
Well, we're off for a short break now, but stay with us because coming up we get a taste of the ultimate adrenaline rushes experienced by our intrepid fast-track reporters over the past year. And we remember the traveller who's still missing after going on holiday in 2009.